Hi everyone, I'm Jack the Rambling Raconteur, and I hope that you're doing well. I wanted to continue the shelf tour, the shelf safari, with a trip to one of my all-time favorite shelves. I love these books. I think they're probably the single best series of anthologies I've ever encountered. And as we're packing up the books, as we're storing these, several of these are absolutely staying out because I just enjoy reading them. I enjoy rereading them. That's the Viking Portable Library. These are my favorites, the sort of paperbacks, the early series of paperbacks that have this sort of Viking ship on the side. I love these books. And so I wanted to go into a series of the anthologies, but I wanted to start by giving just an overview of the Viking Portable Library because it's an interesting publication line. It starts out in 1943. Alexander Woollcott, as part of the civilian efforts to support U.S. troops and the support branches and support systems around the U.S. military during World War II, creates this line of anthologies. As You Were is the original one, a portable library of American prose and poetry assembled for members of the armed forces and the merchant marine. This edition that I am holding is from a later printing from May of 1945. So still during World War II. And the idea was that they would be anthologies around a singular period of writing or a single writer that were in a small hardback that the people in the services or who were overseas could carry in a pocket or in like the pocket of a backpack. And so that idea is represented with the illustrations of the troops on the cover. This initial anthology had a bunch of short stories, including The Devil and Daniel Webster by Stephen Vincent Benet. I believe it's the first one in here. Then went into some poetry and then some different essays. Included within the essay section was the Declaration of Independence, various essays or famous letters, and then it closes out. The final two are the inscription on the Statue of Liberty and the inscription on the Tomb of the Unknown Soldier. So sort of bringing a real sense of purpose around this volume and its time and place, its context. But just a great kickoff to a wonderful series. This series then moved into my favorite line of the paperbacks, before it then shifted to this blocky style that still has the Viking ship with the P for portable on the side, but this sort of blocky style. I have a few volumes of these that I'll show in a later video. This is the Arthur Miller, which has a bunch of his plays and then also some short stories. I don't know how many people knew Arthur Miller ever wrote any short stories, as did Harold Pinter, another person much more famous as a playwright. So this style, then later on it moves to Penguin acquiring the line, and so they retain the Viking Portable Library, but instead of the Viking ship, it's now a Penguin here. I'm a spine scanner when I go into used bookstores, so I still can look for these, or I can look for these. I know what I'm looking for. I see a Viking ship, I grab it. But this cover then, they usually have sort of like photographs. They're not quite the cool designs that we'll see on many of these volumes. They're photographs, and then they usually have a picture of a single individual. So Julius Caesar on the Roman Reader, Dante is on the Medieval Reader, and so on. But these are great. This will be the only one I'll show in this video. And then later on the line moves. It's still acquired by Penguin. It still has the Viking Portable Library on it, but it is now in trade paperback style. It should be noted that the earlier paperback editions are the same size as the Penguin Classics mass markets. But the trade paperbacks, this would be the American Realism Reader. And throughout the period, books that are originally published in the hardback edition or later on in the paperbacks are often reprinted in this format, or later then reprinted in the trade paperback format. And finally, Penguin just decides that they're Penguin Classics and they can be in the black spines. So this is the Portable Malcolm X Reader. There's a number that have been reprinted all the way through the line into this edition. And then Penguin has continued to publish a handful of these, but again, just really a handful in this black spine edition. But I wanted to talk about the sort of series that they have that runs across Western civilization. And each of these anthologies is between 600 and like 800 pages. It's representative writing from that period. The first two are sort of organized sort of by age or by style of writing. And then within the later editions, they become very thematic. But I absolutely love these. So this is the Portable Greek Reader. We have very famous Greek minds, Aristotle, Thucydides, Homer is represented. You don't get the whole full Iliad or Odyssey, but it's passages from Homer, it's passages from Aristotle. There is a full dialogue from Plato, it's the Timaeus. There are passages from various Greek plays, but the major Greek tragedy we get is the full Oresteia from Aeschylus. There are passages from Greek poets, passages from Greek historians that are represented across here. So this is a very great introduction to Greek thought. It could be a great sort of volume for that. This was edited by W.H. Auden. Then it moves to the Portable Roman Reader. I don't have the cool old school edition of the Portable Roman Reader. I know what it looks like. It's red. It's a great red color, very vibrant, and it has a Roman soldier on it. How cool is that? I look forward to acquiring that edition for my library one day. But until then, I've got this, and this is perfectly serviceable. Again, we get passages from Roman writers. Poets are represented. So Ovid, Virgil, of course. The Martial is represented, Juvenal. Even Lucan with the Pharsalia is represented in here. Then we have some pretty full selections from De Rerum Natura, from Lucretius, Julius Caesar's represented, Seneca. It closes out with just a handful of pages from St. Augustine. I believe it's the passage around the trees. Apuleius, just a very short passage from Apuleius, and then Boethius as well. Those are the ones who close out the book. But it's a very good volume. Moving into the Portable Medieval Reader, and this one has had a couple of editions. I believe there's one that has just a woman on the front as well. This edition's pretty cool with the knight and the blue, vibrant blue color. This one's divided up into sort of thematic sections, as I mentioned. So there's one about, there's a whole series of selections on knights. There's a whole series of selections on monastic life. There's a whole series of sections on sort of history. And so there's the Crusades, passages from histories of the Crusades. There are, of course, poets represented, and various poets. There are scientific writings. There are religious writings. There's a letter from Thomas A. Becket to Henry II. Writers like Nicholas of Cusa, I believe Roger of Usk or Adam of Usk. Roger Bacon and Adam of Usk, I believe, are both represented. Yeah, Adam of Usk. Various popes. John of Salisbury. Barbarossa has a selection in here. And so this is an interesting one. In terms of the heights, the literary heights that the other volumes reach, I think this is the single volume that lacks those heights the most. But it is a very comprehensive window into the medieval world in Europe. Probably my single favorite volume, the one I talked about in my top 10 nonfiction books back when my first 2 months of BookTube, the Portable Renaissance Reader. I would like to think that in my heights, I aspire to this type of sartorial elegance. I'm just going to put it out there. I love this book. I've read it cover to cover twice. And this one, again, is divided into sections. The World of Gold. There's a whole section on religious thought. An Age of Gold, where we get even writers like Tasso. Cervantes is represented. Petrarch, Boccaccio, Montaigne. Different popes are represented, Machiavelli, Francis Bacon, so Leon Battista Alberti, Cellini is in here, Leonardo da Vinci, Michelangelo, Ronsard. There's just so many great thinkers and artists and writers who are represented in this book. There's interesting passages around religious thought and shifts, passages around science, passages around art. The purposes of all of those. The medieval section, I think I neglected to mention, has a huge section of biographies as well. This one kind of eschews the biographies for a whole, again, really digging into the world. And I think it's in part because so many of the personalities of the Renaissance did leave something in writing. They weren't just written about, they themselves were writers. So this volume is just top notch. The Portable Elizabethan Reader, this is an interesting one. doesn't actually have a full play from Shakespeare, for example. It has his sonnets, but the plays it has are from Tragic History of Dr. Faustus by Marlowe, and then I believe one from Green is the other playwright who is represented. But it's okay. Walter Raleigh is represented, Francis Bacon. So different people. There's a single entry from Elizabeth herself, Queen Elizabeth. And so this is an interesting volume. The poetry, of course, is fantastic. And the Viking Portable Library did include whole volumes of poetry. But the poetry in this edition, this single edition, is fantastic. The other pieces are I think, interesting. There's bits about John Dee, which is interesting for people who are into sort of alchemy or the occult, or the references that pop up around John Dee and works as varied as like cosmic horror. But as a volume, I think it's not quite up there to the level of the other ones I've shown so far. But it's very good. The Portable Age of Reason Reader. This one, ironically, Crane-Britton kind of like poo-poos this one in the introduction, and goes like, oh, it's not quite as good as the Renaissance, and it's not quite as interesting as the Romantic Reader that comes after it. But gosh, like, give it a shot. No, this is very good. This volume is excellent. There are times where I think anytime I encounter this volume, I really consider it a very strong second to the Renaissance Reader. I love this volume. This one now, of course, has, again, a whole number of very famous writers and thinkers: Descartes, Rousseau, Voltaire, Racine, just enormous number. Adam Smith, David Hume, Thomas Jefferson and John Adams are both represented here. It includes the Declaration of Independence from the U.S. and the French Revolution's Declaration of the Rights of Man. Just a great, great critical volume. And interesting works, interesting passages from a number of writers. The passages from Diderot are maybe the single best things Diderot ever wrote, and they're not in Jacques the Fatalist or The Nun or Rameau's, D'Alembert's Dream and Rameau's Nephew. There are these pieces. Britain really went out and found like true gems to include in this volume, and I cannot recommend it highly enough. I love this book. It also has a very cool, again, picture. Like, I hope I look half this. This almost looks like a meme, honestly, with the eyeglasses. It's just a wonderful cover. My wife gets a kick out of it. And then there is one after this. It's the Victorian Reader, but I have that in the trade paperback edition. I'll show it on another shelf. But the Portable Romantic Reader, great shade of green, very cool, like, cape here, sort of, evoking the romantic hero. And so again, this one is a fascinating book. It's one my daughters really enjoyed getting at, which is why it's all taped up. They tore it up when they were babies. Each of them did. One got the back cover and one got the front cover 2 years later. But it's worth repairing because this is a great volume. It has a number of writers who are, famous romantics: William Blake, Goethe, of course, Shelley, Coleridge, Byron, Keats, Mary Shelley. There's passages from Frankenstein. So it has all of the famous names, but Stendhal is represented. And there's an interesting theme within this one. One of them involves the romantic hero and the fatal woman. 20th century ethos. But within the romantic hero, there's a whole section of fictional and historical representations of Napoleon, and the way in which Napoleon sort of looms large over the consciousness of Europe at the time. Rousseau, of course, manages to make it into the romantic volume as well. And the poetry is excellent. Hugo is represented. Hegel makes it in here. I'm trying to make sure there's nobody else I miss. Schiller, Hölderlin, Novalis, Baudelaire, and it's just really fascinating and interesting. Charles Lamb is in here. And so this is just a fascinating and interesting volume, one that I thoroughly enjoy. So that's sort of the main anthology sequence that the Viking Portable Library had, but they also had several other anthologies that are absolute dynamite. One of them is the Greek Historians. The translations are a little old, but it's basically the top highlights and peaks from Herodotus, Thucydides, Xenophon, Polybius. Polybius is not on the level of the others. just my opinion as a reader, and as a reader who loves these writers, Polybius is not on the same level as these others, but it has the very best of Herodotus, the very best of Thucydides, the Sicilian expedition, the Pericles funeral oration, some of the fantastic writing from Herodotus, particularly when the clash finally occurs between the Greek city-states and the Persian kingdom. But it doesn't, of course, have all of Herodotus' marvelous little digressions that I love. And then Xenophon, it's the best of Xenophon. Xenophon can be very dry at times, so distilled Xenophon might actually be the best Xenophon, but this is a great one. Maybe my single favorite Viking Portable at any given time again would be the Viking Portable World Bible. Whether you are religious, whether you're agnostic, non-religious at all, this is a fantastic foundational volume to have an understanding of the different major religions. Zoroastrianism is included in here, but it has Hindu, and so each of the sections has generally abridged and self-contained passages from generally sacred texts or scriptures or works of wisdom that are revered within sort of that school of thought or belief. And so it has Hindu and Buddhist works, and then Zoroastrian works, which this is one of the only volumes that prints Zoroastrian thought in it. Then moves into the Hebrew Bible or the Old Testament, the Christian New Testament, and Islam, and then closes out with Confucius thought and Taoist thought. And it doesn't just have the Analects from Confucius; it actually has the works from Mencius. And then within Taoism, it doesn't just have the Tao Te Ching; it also has the works of Chuangzi. So this is a really wonderful, wonderful book that I cannot recommend highly enough. It's one that I reread frequently. Wonderful book. And then finally, the Portable Russian Reader. The person who I acquired this from at some point, some previous owner of this volume, really hated it. The final page has very poor selections, a very poor anthology. I disagree. I think it's a pretty good one. It was later split, when Penguin acquired the line, it was split into the Portable 19th Century Russian Reader and the Portable 20th Century Russian Reader, which sort of divided up the riches in here and then added a few others. But it has, plenty of famous works. So it includes the Grand Inquisitor section from the Brothers Karamazov. It includes the Overcoat from Gogol. It includes a section from Pushkin, The Shot. It includes, I want to say it includes a single story by Leskov. It includes Ward No. 6 by Chekhov. Some Gorky is in here. And, Gorky's sort of Tolstoy and Chekhov, like biographical sketches. And Birth of a Man by Gorky is the fictional work in here. It has a story set in Lyubka the Cossack by Isaac Babel. So it has a number of very famous Russian writers and like a single selection from each of them. But it also has some poetry. It has some letters and sort of like parable, proverbs, I should say. And so it ends up being I think a pretty darn good anthology. And it's got a cool cover on it. So anyways, these were Viking Portable Anthologies. Again, I absolutely love these. I have a whole series of the old school form nonfiction. I have fiction. I have the books like that Roman Reader I shared. And then I have the trade paperbacks, the poetry, and the Black Spine Penguins that I'll do. So there's a couple more Viking Portable Library tours coming along. But again, I love these. I'd be curious to know if there's anybody else who collects them or anybody else who has like a favorite volume. I have plenty more to share. So thank you, everyone.